Dan is real. Dan and Phil have confirmed they are a couple and have been a couple for years in a brand new, almost 1 hour long video. The whole thing is a fascinating example of how people online have to manage their relationship with their audience, as well as each other. Plus, there's been some amazing and hilarious reactions to this. We have it all in one place right here on Scroll Deep with me, Benedict Townsend, the show that keeps up with internet nonsense. Sorry, I'm getting so emotional. So you don't have to. Dan and Phil, the iconic YouTube duo, have confirmed that they really are a couple and have been for years, as some fans have been feverishly speculating. And sorry, wait, Dan Howell is in this story? Well, you know what that means. It means it's time for Dan Howell Watch. Some people will love that we did that. Some people, a lot of people, will be very confused that we did that. And I can think of exactly one person who will probably hate that we did that. Sorry, Dan. Right, let's start with the basics then. Who are Dan and Phil? Oh, what a question. How long you got? There will 100% be people who have written dissertations about Dan and Phil. If that is you, holler in the comments. For a long time, Dan and Phil were the internet. I really cannot overstate how big they were and still are. These are YouTubers who have done multiple global tours. And I cannot emphasize enough how powerful and sometimes terrifying their fan group, the fandom with a PH, really are. I honestly think the fans could defeat the Swifties in raw hand-to-hand combat. Related, actually, Dan and Phil interviewed Taylor Swift. This is how big Dan and Phil are. They were separate creators. They made their own videos. Dan is Southern. He was born in Wokingham. Yeah, frickin' bet he was. And Phil was born in Lancashire. And they were known to be close friends, and they were also known to live together. But throughout this time, a lot of viewers speculated that they may not be straight, and that they may also not be straight concurrently. And let's be honest, the pair of them did not necessarily dissuade these rumors. You know, these rumors were something that they actively sort of played with, made jokes about. I don't want fans to get mad at me here, but like, you know, they loved a double entendre. They would do a YouTube headline with a joke in it about being a couple. They would make romantic jokes with each other, which they were fine to do. But they are ultimately people, and people have a right to their own privacy and their own lives. And Dan in this new video talks about everything he went through with his own internalized homophobia stemming from his childhood. Basically, he said, look, he came out quite late, he says. He didn't come out publicly until 2019, which was around the same time he came out to the people who knew him personally. Phil came out publicly not long after that, and he said that that journey of him coming out is what also probably delayed them revealing that they have been a couple for years, kind of the whole time. Dan says, quote, in my mid-20s, I felt we had to hide the relationship because I was still hiding who I was from our friends and family, from myself. Now, before we continue, the pair had something to say to people covering this story, so let's just listen to the boys.
Clickbait journalists of the world, please try to write a headline with at least one interesting angle that isn't just a fact.
That'd be nice.
I'll help you out. Dan and Phil address the rumors. We want to live in peace. Dan
Good
and
one.
Phil on forgiving the past and choosing joy.
Dan and Phil are here to serve fun.
There we go. And if we were a clickbait outlet, heaven forbid, we'd sit up straight at hearing that news. But luckily, we always deliver what we promise. So in that spirit, let's continue and talk about how they forgave their past and chose joy. In the video, they also address people digging around for information about them. Dan said, quote, the digging online hit a nerve because Phil was my safe space. Having people try to out us, it was so triggering, it could have killed me. And apparently the stress of the rumors and the digging seems to have taken its toll on Dan and made him more resistant to going public with the relationship. There's sort of an irony there, really, that people were so fixated on them revealing the relationship that they actually prevented the relationship being revealed. And, you know, so much of this is about the relationship between them and their fans. They obviously love their fans obviously really love them, but you know, it is that give and take, that parasocial thing, you know, how much can you know, how much you were allowed to know. I mean, later in the video, they actually directly address this, and they said, quote, what we want to do is create content to make you laugh. This is what we are giving, and we are hoping that you're going to be happy with that. This is also a commitment to you. But they also requested privacy and laid down some ground rules, some pretty, I would say, reasonable, easy to follow ground rules, which said that they don't want people, quote, digging into things they don't share and leaking things against their will, right, which is fair. You can do anything you want with public information, but don't like look up their birth records or whatever. They said they're fine with fanfic, which if you don't know, that's sort of like a person making up fake stories about them. I don't know what kind of crazy person would do that.
What's Dan been up to this week? Dan is, of course, running for president in 2020.
To me, that's crazier than a factory that makes factories. Phil said, quote, "I want to leave the house without being spied on, even going for a meal." Which, part of that, unfortunately, is, part of being famous, but I think he's being quite reasonable there. Although I will say he's starting to sound a little bit like that evil woman, Chapel Rowan, the singer who personally punches every fan she sees in the face, at least judging by the way people talk about her online. Raise a hand if you've been murdered by Chapel Rowan. Before we continue, a big thank you to everyone who's been watching and listening to the show on Spotify. Scroll Deep is now available on Spotify. You can carry it with you like a little podcast. Doesn't mean you shouldn't follow here on TikTok. I'm just saying you got options, baby. It's also on YouTube. It's also on Snapchat. Just watch it. It's on Bebo. I'm watching it right now on my watch, the way we intended. Now, the reactions to this new video and the news within have been quite jubilant. People have been very happy. And as you can imagine with Dan and Phil fans, there's also been lots of very funny responses, funny memes. The top comment on the YouTube video currently at the time of recording is, quote, "I'm so glad I didn't unalive myself." And then Dan actually has a very funny line in the video where he says he would rather actually than use the word unalive. Another person wrote, quote, "They hit the Fantagon." We have to censor all of these. Someone else said, quote, over on X, the Everything app, someone replied to Popcrave saying, "The most terminally online girl from your high school is having a stroke right now." Another person joked, "This is your sign, shippers. Never give up. Never let go of your delusions. There's a possibility you're right." I don't know if that is the healthiest conclusion we can take from this. But what conclusion can we take from this? Well, it does seem like a circle has finally been closed. One of the 2000s internet's greatest mysteries has been resolved, much like how we recently found out what happened to Martha, the hound. They did answer, "Where's the hound?" I don't know if we touched on this in the show, but yeah, the hound just went somewhere else, actually did go and live on a farm. Not like a kind of farm. More like a moo kind of farm. But in a way, it kind of feels like the 2012 internet has finally come to a close. So just a quick reminder, we were locked in 2012 internet, that's finished, and then politically we're still in 2016. We're always just in some kind of arc of the past. Now, will fans follow their requests? Probably by and large. I'm sure people will take it too far, but the people who are really into Dan and Phil, I think, like Dan and Phil, respect Dan and Phil. I mean, again, I'll say this, you're not going to get this kind of stuff with AI creators. That's what's on the horizon, right? AI. You can't ship AI because you can just type in, "Now you're in a relationship," and then the AI is. And that's not fun, is it? Where's the intrigue? Where's the enemies to lovers? This isn't really enemies to lovers. This is none of your business to your business. This has been Dan How Watch. And now we come to the secret question for people who've made it all the way to the end. Dennis, do you want to do the question today? You don't? Okay, I'll do it. The question is this, and we'll keep it retro YouTube related. What is your favorite word or phrase that will instantly cause a psychic attack on people who were on the internet 10 years ago? I'm not talking about offensive things. I'm talking about if you write super hulock in a comment, a lot of people will be like, "Whoa," and instantly see through time. Is there a video title or a meme or something that you can bring to mind, like an old Tumblr reference? Haven't heard that. Haven't heard Super Hulock in a long time, Yeah, let me know your favorite niche internet thing. And maybe it might not be a mainstream one. Maybe it's one from a specific community you're in, but either way, leave it down below. And of course, last episode, we promised to do a numbers section, and we haven't done that, I've noticed, in this episode. So keep your eyes and ears peeled, because we'll do it in the next episode. Now, I guess the only ship we need to find out if it's real is Rattle Rowan. Are the rat and Crabble a couple? Keep watching to find out. I'm Benedict Townsend, this is Scroll Deep. Thanks for watching. Make sure to follow to get new episodes. And hey, getting in a relationship with your best friend for years and living with them and going on world tours and being unimaginably rich just from hanging out and having fun, that's tennis. Can I do a Dan Howell impression? Does that work? Is this giving Shane Dawson instead? Oh no. Here's the thumbnail, and then we just need the little whiskers, and then quickly get the part back. We need the part.